That Tuesday changed everything. I found lace lingerie in the dresser drawer that I had never seen Evelina wear. October in Miami always brings a slight relief after the scorching summer, but that day the air felt heavy, like before a storm. I, Kevin, a blogger with a middle-class but stable income, came home earlier than usual. Evelina, my wife of 4 years, a data processing specialist, was supposed to work until evening. Our apartment in downtown Miami had always been our little fortress, a place where we built our shared life together. Looking for a charger for my camera, I accidentally opened the wrong drawer. There, among ordinary things, lay a set of black lace, elegant, expensive, clearly new. I had never seen Evelina wear it. My heart skipped a beat, but I tried to find a logical explanation. Maybe she wanted to make a surprise? But something told me this wasn't the case. The next few days I tried to dismiss my suspicions, but they grew like poisonous ivy, wrapping around my thoughts and choking out any peace of mind I had left. Evelina became somewhat distant, frequently checking her phone and smiling at the screen with an expression I couldn't quite place. When I asked what was so amusing, she replied with some general phrases about funny memes from colleagues. Her answers were always just a bit too quick, just a bit too rehearsed. I started noticing small changes in her routine. She began staying late at work more often, claiming urgent projects and tight deadlines. She started going to the gym 3 times a week instead of her usual once, saying she wanted to get back in shape. Her wardrobe seemed to have expanded with pieces I didn't remember her buying. Every time I tried to engage her in deeper conversation about us, about our future, she would deflect with practiced ease. Then I remembered that moment on the cruise ship 3 months ago. We had decided to celebrate our 4th anniversary with a spring trip through the Caribbean. It was my gift to Evelina, a week on a luxurious liner that departed directly from the port of Miami. I brought all my equipment with me: cameras, a drone, stabilizers. As a blogger, I was used to documenting everything, and the cruise seemed like the perfect opportunity to create content that would engage my audience and boost my subscriber count. The ship itself was magnificent: 12 decks of luxury, multiple restaurants, 3 swimming pools, a spa, a theater, and endless entertainment options. Our cabin was on the 7th deck with a small balcony overlooking the ocean. Evelina seemed excited those first couple of days, holding my hand as we explored the ship, laughing at the corny entertainment shows, taking selfies together against the backdrop of endless blue water. On the 3rd day of the journey, after breakfast at the buffet where we had stuffed ourselves with fresh pastries and tropical fruits, I told Evelina I was going to shoot some footage of the ship. She tied her bright yellow bikini under her summer dress and said she would be sunbathing by the pool on the upper deck. I kissed her, tasting the lingering sweetness of pineapple on her lips, and went to the cabin for my equipment. At first, I filmed the ship's interiors: the grand lounges with crystal chandeliers that sparkled like captured stars, restaurants with panoramic windows that made you feel like you were dining on the ocean itself, the elegant staircases with brass railings polished to a mirror shine. Then I returned to the cabin and started filming the ocean from our window, capturing the way the sunlight danced across the waves, creating millions of tiny diamonds on the water's surface. That's when the idea hit me, one that seemed both brilliant and slightly insane at the same time. What if I launched the drone directly from the cabin through the window? I could shoot the liner from a bird's eye view. Such footage would definitely collect millions of views on my channel. I had been struggling to break past the 500,000 subscriber mark for months, and I knew I needed something spectacular to push through that barrier. Technically, this was probably against the rules, but I didn't know for sure. I decided to risk it, but to do it smartly: fly in front of the ship, between the sun and the liner, so the drone would be almost invisible due to the glare. I carefully opened the window, felt the warm Caribbean breeze rush in, checked the battery: full charge, 87% to be exact. The drone took off without problems and I began to control it, moving away from the ship. The picture was stunning: a snow-white liner cutting through turquoise waters, leaving a foamy trail behind it like a white ribbon unfurling across blue silk. The contrast between the massive vessel and the endless ocean was breathtaking. I filmed several general shots, adjusting angles and heights, then decided to fly closer to the pool on the upper deck. I wanted to capture Evelina on video, a romantic moment for our shared memory, something sweet to show at anniversary dinners in years to come. Her bright yellow bikini stood out among dozens of people by the pool like a sunflower in a field of grass. I adjusted the camera, zoomed in with the precision I had developed over years of filming, and froze. Evelina was lying on a lounge chair, turned toward a man on the adjacent lounger. She was laughing with an openness and joy I hadn't seen in months, her whole body language relaxed and engaged. Her face radiated something I hadn't seen in a long time: genuine joy, A live interest, the kind of animated expression she used to have when we first started dating. Then she took her phone, typed something with careful deliberation and showed the screen to that man. He nodded with a confident smile, took out his own phone, and a moment later she was looking at her screen again and smiling with a secretive, pleased expression. I watched as she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, a gesture she always made when she was nervous or excited. Even from this height, I could see their chemistry, the way they leaned toward each other as if pulled by invisible magnets, how she coquettishly tossed her hair, how his body angled toward hers in a way that spoke of intimate familiarity. That man was older, tanned with the kind of deep bronze that spoke of leisure time and tropical vacations. Wearing expensive sunglasses, he exuded confidence and money from every pore. His posture, his gestures, everything about him screamed success and power. Suddenly I realized two things. First, the drone's battery was dying, showing only 23% remaining, and I needed to return it urgently, otherwise it would fall into the ocean and I'd lose thousands of dollars of equipment. Second, landing a drone on a moving ship through a cabin window was a complex task that required concentration and steady hands. I forced myself to look away from what I had just seen and focused on piloting. Returning the drone was not easy. The wind at sea was changeable, gusting unpredictably from different directions, and the ship constantly swayed with the motion of the waves. It took me several minutes of nervous maneuvering, my palms sweating despite the air conditioning, to finally pull the drone through the window. I barely made it in time. The battery showed only 5% remaining. My hands were shaking as I set the drone down on the desk. But the ship's personnel still noticed the drone when I was trying to land it. 10 minutes later, there was a knock on the cabin door. A security officer stood there, in his crisp white uniform with gold buttons. He was polite but stern, explained that the use of drones on board was strictly prohibited for safety and privacy reasons. There had been incidents on other ships, he told me, where drones had crashed into windows or fallen on passengers. The drone was confiscated until the end of the cruise, and I was warned that a repeat violation would lead to more serious consequences, possibly even being confined to my cabin for the remainder of the voyage. I didn't argue. Moreover, I barely reacted, just nodded numbly and handed over the equipment. The officer gave me a receipt and left. My mind was still processing what I had seen on the recording. After the officer left, I sat on the edge of the bed, pulled out my laptop, transferred the video files and watched the footage again. I slowed it down, enlarged it, analyzed every frame like a detective studying evidence at a crime scene. There were no doubts left. My wife was flirting with a stranger and had exchanged contacts with him. The intimacy of their body language, the way she touched her neck when she laughed at something he said, the way he looked at her, it all pointed to something that went beyond innocent conversation. I went to the pool, my legs moving on autopilot while my mind raced through possibilities, excuses, explanations. Evelina was lying on the same lounger, alone now. When she saw me, her face instantly changed, became ordinary, with that slightly bored expression I had been seeing lately, so different from the animated joy I had witnessed from above just minutes ago. "Hi, honey. How was the filming?" She smiled, but that smile didn't reach her eyes. It was her public smile, the one she used with acquaintances and strangers. "Great," I replied, sitting down next to her, feeling the heat of the sun-warmed plastic through my shorts. "But the staff confiscated my drone. Turns out they can't be used on the ship." "Oh, what a shame." She didn't actually look too upset, already turning her attention back to her phone. "Were you here long?" "Just arrived. And you? Did you meet anyone?" A short pause. Too short to be natural, too calculated. "No, just sunbathing. There are a lot of people here, but everyone kind of keeps to themselves." I nodded, not insisting, though my throat felt tight with unspoken accusations. The rest of the cruise we spent together, but something had changed fundamentally. I felt how Evelina checked her phone from time to time, how she became inattentive during our conversations, how her mind was clearly somewhere else even when her body sat next to me at dinner or during the evening shows. And I played the role of an unsuspecting husband, smiling for photos, holding her hand during the sunset, all while waiting for our return home where I could think clearly and decide what to do. We visited 3 ports during that cruise: Cozumel, Grand Cayman, and Jamaica. In each place, Evelina seemed distracted, checking her phone whenever she thought I wasn't looking. In Cozumel, when we were supposed to go snorkeling together, she claimed she had a headache and stayed on the ship. In Grand Cayman, she spent most of our time there in a beachside cafe, typing on her phone while I explored the local markets alone. By Jamaica, I had stopped suggesting activities together, and we moved through the day like polite strangers sharing space rather than married partners. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel and click like if you enjoy this story. I always read your comments and analyze which stories you like best so that I can create better stories. Thank you. I will continue the story. When we finally returned to Miami at the end of May, the city welcomed us with its usual chaos. Traffic, humidity, the constant buzz of a city that never quite slept. I decided not to rush to conclusions. Maybe it was just innocent flirting? Maybe I was exaggerating? I tried to convince myself that I had misinterpreted what I saw, that the distance and the drone's camera had distorted the reality of their interaction. But that lingerie set 3 months later destroyed all my attempts to justify Evelina's behavior. The months between the cruise and October passed in a strange limbo. I threw myself into my work, editing videos, engaging with my audience, taking on sponsored content that I normally would have turned down. My subscriber count actually grew during this period. I crossed 600,000 by August. Evelina continued her routine, or what I thought was her routine. She went to work, came home, we had dinner, watched television, occasionally went out with friends. On the surface, everything appeared normal. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was living with a stranger wearing my wife's face. One evening in late September, I came home to find Evelina in the shower. Her phone was on the kitchen counter, screen facing up. It buzzed with a notification. Without thinking, almost reflexively, I glanced at it. A text preview: "Can't wait to see you Friday." Same place. The sender's name was just saved as O with a business emoji next to it. My hands started to shake. I put down my bag, listened to make sure the water was still running, and made a decision that I knew would either confirm my suspicions or prove me wrong. I needed to know the truth even if it destroyed me. That October evening when I found the lingerie, everything crystallized into sharp, painful focus. I was looking for a charger for my camera in what I thought was my drawer, but I had opened Evelina's by mistake. There, carefully folded beneath some workout clothes she claimed to wear to the gym, was a set of black lace lingerie with the tag still attached. Designer brand, expensive, the kind of lingerie that cost more than our monthly utilities. The price tag read $247. I stood there, holding that delicate fabric in my hands, and felt something break inside me. This wasn't something bought for me, for us. The tags were still on, which meant she hadn't worn it yet, but she had bought it with intention, with purpose, for someone specific. The next few days, I lived in a surreal fog, going through the motions of daily life while my mind worked overtime. Evelina behaved as always, cooked our usual dinners, told me about work projects involving data migration and system updates, asked about my videos and my plans for upcoming content. We even made love on Thursday night, and I hated myself for the way my body responded to hers, despite what I knew. Her touch felt different now, contaminated somehow, as if knowing about her betrayal had physically changed the sensation of her skin against mine. On Friday morning, Evelina said she had a company event after work and would return late. She kissed me goodbye, a quick peck that barely grazed my cheek, straightened her blazer and headed for the door. I nodded, kissed her back with mechanical precision, and waited until I heard her car pull out of the parking garage before I started to move. Then I acted with a clarity of purpose that surprised me. First, I transferred all my savings from our joint account to my personal one. This was about $30,000, money I had earned through my blog over the past few years, revenue from sponsorships, ad revenue, affiliate marketing. It represented countless hours of work, of filming, of editing, of engaging with my audience. Evelina had access to this account, and I wasn't going to risk losing what I had worked so hard to build. Then I called my friend John, a divorce attorney I had known since college. We had kept in touch over the years, meeting for basketball games and beers, though I never imagined I would need his professional services. I told him everything: the cruise, the lingerie, the text message, my suspicions. John listened without interrupting, his lawyer instincts kicking in even over the phone. When I finished, he let out a long sigh. "Kevin, I'm sorry you're going through this. Let me ask you something. Are you absolutely certain? Sometimes there can be explanations." "I'm certain, John. I saw them together. I've been watching the signs for months." "Okay. I'll start preparing the divorce papers. Fortunately, you don't have children, no shared real estate, just the apartment you're renting. The divorce should be relatively straightforward. Florida's a no-fault state, which actually works in your favor here. We can probably get this done in a few months if she doesn't contest it." "She won't contest it," I said with a certainty that came from somewhere deep inside me. "Once I confront her with what I know, she won't fight me." "Are you sure you don't want to try talking to her first? Maybe counseling? Some couples can work through infidelity." "Absolutely not." My certainty surprised even me. "I saw everything, John. I read their messages. This isn't a mistake, not a moment of weakness. This is a conscious choice she made again and again over months. How do you rebuild trust after that? John was quiet for a moment. You can't really. Trust is like. He paused, searching for the right analogy, then gave up. Look, you just can't. I'll have the papers ready by Monday. Come by my office and we'll go over everything. In the evening, I drove to the Fontainebleau Hotel. I didn't know what I expected. Maybe I wanted to see them together with my own eyes, make the pain even more real, transform my suspicions into undeniable reality that would make it easier to let go. The hotel loomed over Collins Avenue, a monument to luxury with its curved towers and Art Deco styling. I parked across from the main entrance in a spot with a clear view of the lobby and waited, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. At 6 p.m, I saw Evelina. She walked confidently, her heels clicking on the pavement with purposeful rhythm, wearing a new dress I didn't recognize, deep red, fitted, the kind of dress that announced intentions. In the lobby, Otto met her. I couldn't hear what they said, but I watched as he placed his hand on her lower back with the familiarity of someone who had done it many times before, proprietary and intimate. He leaned in and kissed her, not passionately but intimately, like people do when they've been together for a while, when the desperate hunger has settled into comfortable routine. Then they walked together to the elevators, her body leaning into his arm around her waist, two people completely at ease with each other. I sat in the car for another hour, just watching the entrance, watching other couples come and go, watching the valets park cars and the doormen greet guests. I didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't feel the explosive anger I had expected. I felt only emptiness and a strange relief. Now I knew for certain. No more doubts, no more what-ifs, no more excuses my mind could manufacture to protect me from the truth. When Evelina returned home at 9:30, I was already there, waiting. I had positioned myself on the couch, the divorce papers lying on the coffee table like a loaded gun. I had spent that hour after she left the hotel preparing myself mentally, rehearsing what I would say, steeling myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. "Kevin?" She stopped in surprise at the door, her hand still on the handle. "What's going on?" "Sit down," I said calmly, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "We need to talk." She saw the papers and tried to maintain composure, but her face paled, the color draining away like water from a broken glass. Her hand fluttered to her throat in a gesture of unconscious anxiety. "What is this?" "Divorce papers. I know about Otto. I know everything." The next few seconds were the longest of my life. I watched as different emotions flickered across her face in rapid succession. Shock, fear, confusion, and then, was that relief? A sense that she no longer had to maintain the charade? She lowered herself into the chair opposite me, her movements slow and careful, like someone approaching a wild animal. "How long have you known?" "Since that day on the cruise when I filmed you two together with my drone. Then I found the lingerie. Read your messages. Saw you meet today at the Fontainebleau." "Kevin, She fell silent, searching for words that wouldn't come. "I didn't want this to happen. But it did happen. And you continued doing it for months. You made a choice, Evelina. Every time you texted him, every time you met him at that hotel, every time you came home and kissed me after being with him, those were all choices. You don't understand," her voice trembled, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "I felt so lonely. You're always busy with your blog, your cameras, your subscribers. When was the last time we just talked? When did we last do something together besides that cruise?" That's not an excuse. I felt anger finally breaking through the emptiness, hot and sharp. "If you were unhappy, you should have talked to me, not gone to bed with another man. That's what adults do. They communicate, they work on their problems, they don't betray the person who trusts them most in the world." "I know." She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, ruining her carefully applied makeup. "God, I know. But Otto, he listened to me. He made me feel important. With him I felt alive again, seen, valued. You were always behind a camera or a computer screen. When was the last time you really looked at me, Kevin? Really saw me? And what now?" I asked, forcing my voice to remain level despite the fury building in my chest. "Do you love him?" Pause. Too long a pause, filled with the ticking of the wall clock and the distant sound of traffic from the street below. "I don't know. I thought I did, but..." "But what?" "He's married, Kevin. He has a wife and 2 children. He never planned to leave them for me. I was just entertainment. A distraction from whatever problems he has in his own marriage. He made that clear from the beginning, actually. I didn't want to hear it. I wanted to believe that what we had meant something more." The irony of the situation was almost laughable. Evelina had betrayed me for a man who was using her the same way she was using me, as a convenient option while something better presented itself. We were all just using each other, I realized. Nobody in this triangle was innocent, though some of us were more culpable than others. Sign the papers, I said, pushing them across the table toward her along with a pen. Can't we try to fix this? I'll stop seeing him. I'll do whatever you want. Counseling, therapy, whatever you think we need. I'll quit my job if you want me to be home more. I'll change, Kevin. I promise I'll change. No, I was surprised by how decisive my voice was, how final. Even if I wanted to try and I no longer trust you. And without trust, there's nothing to build on. Every time you'd be late from work, every time you'd check your phone, every time you'd smile at something I couldn't see, I would wonder. I would doubt. That's no way to live, Evelina. That's not a marriage. That's a prison. She sat motionless for several minutes, tears flowing down her cheeks, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. I watched her cry with a strange detachment, as if I were filming a scene for one of my videos rather than living through the end of my marriage. Then she took the pen, her hand shaking, and signed the documents with jerky, uncertain movements. The following week, Evelina moved in with her friend Monica, who lived in Coral Gables. John quickly processed the divorce. Florida allows a simplified procedure when both parties agree and there are no children involved. We divided the furniture and belongings equally, though the process was awkward and painful, each item carrying memories we both wanted to forget. The couch where we had cuddled watching movies. The bed where we had made love and made plans for a future that would never exist. The kitchen table where we had shared thousands of meals and conversations. We broke the lease on the apartment, paying the penalty fee and going our separate ways. I found a small studio in Wynwood, Miami's art district, and started over, surrounding myself with graffiti-covered walls and the creativity of others as I rebuilt my own life. But the most interesting thing happened a month after the divorce was finalized. I received a text from an unknown number. My first instinct was to delete it, probably spam or a wrong number. But something made me open it. I need to talk to you. It's important. Not about Evelina. The text was signed, Otto Westbrook. At first, I wanted to ignore the message, to block the number and pretend I had never seen it. But curiosity won out over anger. What could this man possibly have to say to me? What explanation or justification could he offer that would make any difference? Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him. We chose a neutral place, a coffee shop by the ocean in South Beach, far enough from where Evelina and I had lived that I wouldn't run into anyone I knew. Otto turned out to be about 15 years older than me, probably in his early 50s, with gray at his temples and tired eyes that held a weariness I hadn't seen in the confident man from the cruise ship photos. He didn't look like the assured businessman from the photographs, the one who had stolen my wife. Instead, he looked diminished somehow, smaller than I had imagined during all those months of obsessing over him. "Thank you for coming," he began, his hands wrapped around a coffee cup he hadn't touched. "I know I have no right to ask anything of you after what I did." "Then why are we here?" I asked, my voice flat and emotionless. "My wife found out. About Evelina and the others." "The others?" He nodded, looking down at his untouched coffee. "Evelina wasn't the first and wasn't the last. I have a problem. An addiction to the thrill, to new conquests, to the validation that comes from making someone want me. My therapist says it's about control and self-worth, about filling some hole inside me that can never be filled. My wife gave me an ultimatum: either I go to therapy and stop this circus, or she takes the kids and half of my business. 15 years of marriage, 2 beautiful children, everything I've built, all of it was about to disappear because I couldn't stop chasing something I can't even name. And you chose therapy," I guessed, taking a sip of my own coffee, watching him carefully. "Yes. I started a program for sex addicts. 12-step recovery, group meetings, individual counseling, the whole thing. It's humiliating and necessary in equal measure. And part of the process, step 9 actually, is asking forgiveness from people I've hurt. Making amends where possible, acknowledging the damage I've caused." I sat silently, processing this information, trying to reconcile the broken man in front of me with the confident figure I had seen on that drone footage, with the villain I had built up in my mind over these months. "I'm not asking for your forgiveness," Otto continued, finally looking up and meeting my eyes. "I don't deserve it and I know that. But I want you to know, Evelina really did feel lonely. She talked about you a lot, about your marriage, about how she felt invisible to you. She loved you even while she was betraying you. I know that sounds impossible, contradictory, but humans are capable of holding contradictory feelings simultaneously. That doesn't make sense, I said, though part of me knew it did, knew that love and betrayal weren't mutually exclusive, that people could hurt the ones they cared about most. I know. But people are complex. Sometimes we destroy what we love because we're afraid, or because we're broken in ways we don't understand, or because we're trying to fill voids that can never be filled with external validation. Evelina is broken just like I am. The difference is that I've acknowledged it and am trying to change. She hasn't gotten there yet, may never get there. Some people never do. After the meeting with Otto, I sat on the beach for a long time, watching the ocean as the sun set. The October sun painted the sky in shades of orange and pink, the colors reflecting off the water like liquid fire. October in Miami was beautiful, still warm, but without the suffocating heat of summer, that perfect balance before winter brought the snowbirds south and crowded the beaches. I thought about Evelina, about our marriage, about everything that had gone wrong. Maybe I really was too focused on the blog. Maybe I didn't pay her enough attention. Maybe if I had put down the camera more often, had really listened when she spoke instead of planning my next video in my head, things would have been different. But maybe not. Maybe this was always where we were headed, two people who wanted different things, who had different ideas about loyalty and commitment and what marriage meant. The thing was, none of my potential failures justified betrayal. Nothing justified lying to someone you promised to be honest with, sleeping with someone else while your spouse trusted you completely. If she was unhappy, she should have said something, should have demanded couples counseling or separation or anything except what she did. But she chose the path of deception, and that choice revealed something fundamental about who she was, something I could never unsee or forget. 2 months later, I accidentally ran into my former colleague Lily on the street. We had worked together briefly at a media company before I went full-time with my blog. She was a photographer, talented but struggling to build her own client base. We stopped to chat, catching up on each other's lives with the casual intimacy of people who once shared an office and commiserated over bad coffee. She asked about Evelina, and I briefly told her we had divorced. Her expression changed immediately, sympathy flooding her features. "I'm sorry, Kevin. That must have been hard." "It was. It is. But I'm managing." "You know," Lily said, tilting her head and studying me with an artist's eye, "you seem happier somehow. Lighter. Is that weird to say?" I thought about her words as we parted ways. Happier? I didn't know about that. But definitely freer. Free from suspicion, from lies, from living with someone I could no longer trust. Free from the constant anxiety of wondering where she was, who she was with, whether the person I saw at breakfast was the same person who existed when I wasn't looking. My blog unexpectedly started growing after the divorce. Maybe because I channeled all my energy into work, posting more consistently, engaging more with my audience, taking creative risks I wouldn't have attempted before. Maybe because the pain made my content more authentic, more human, more relatable. Subscribers sensed something had changed, some depth or vulnerability that hadn't been there before. I didn't talk about the divorce directly, that felt too personal, too raw, but it informed everything I created. By December, I had crossed 800,000 subscribers. Evelina texted me once, 3 months after the divorce was finalized. It was late at night, and I was editing a video when my phone buzzed with her name on the screen. My finger hovered over the delete button, but curiosity won again. The message was short: "I regret everything. I hope you find happiness." I stared at those words for a long time, sitting there in my small studio apartment surrounded by camera equipment and editing monitors. Part of me wanted to respond, to tell her I forgave her, or that I hoped she found happiness too, or something that would provide closure to this chapter of our lives. But another part of me knew that responding would only reopen wounds that were finally starting to heal. Some conversations didn't need to happen. Some endings were better left as endings. I didn't respond. Not because I hated her. The anger had long since burned out, leaving only sadness and understanding that some things simply couldn't be fixed. We had both made mistakes in our marriage, but she had made a choice that made any return impossible. Her regret, sincere as it might be, couldn't undo what had been done, couldn't restore what had been broken. Now, sitting in my new apartment, looking at nighttime Miami through the window, I understand. Life didn't end. It just changed. Sometimes betrayal isn't the end of the story, but the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter where you learn to trust again, love again, but wiser now, more careful, more aware of the signs you missed before. I don't know if I'll ever meet someone with whom I'll want to try again. For now, I'm fine alone, rebuilding myself, rediscovering who I am without Evelina, learning to fill my time with things that matter to me. My work is thriving. I've started collaborating with other creators. I've taken up surfing, something I always wanted to try but never had time for. I've reconnected with friends I had neglected during my marriage. I'm building a life that's mine alone, not half of a partnership that was rotting from the inside. And that drone, the one confiscated on the cruise, I never picked it up. It's somewhere in the archives of the cruise company, with a recording of that moment that changed everything. Sometimes I think it's symbolic. That day, that mistake with the drone led to discovering the truth. If not for my decision to launch it, if not for that random flight over the pool, I could have lived in lies for months, maybe years longer. Would ignorance have been better? Some days I think so. Most days I know it wouldn't have been. A comfortable lie is still a lie, and living in it would have slowly poisoned me from the inside. Fate has a strange sense of humor. It shows you the truth precisely when you're least ready to see it. But better a hard truth than a comfortable lie. Better the pain of knowing than the slow erosion of being deceived. Better to be alone with dignity than partnered with someone who treats your trust as something disposable, something to be discarded when convenient. I've learned that marriage is about more than love. It's about respect, about honesty, about choosing your partner every single day even when it's hard, even when someone new and exciting appears. It's about communication, about saying, "I'm unhappy," instead of seeking comfort in someone else's arms. It's about building something together and protecting it fiercely from anything that might destroy it. Evelina didn't understand that, or maybe she did and chose differently anyway. Either way, she's not my problem anymore. She's someone else's past or future mistake, someone else's lesson to learn. As for me, I'm focusing on myself, on my work, on building a life that feels authentic and whole, not like a performance or a lie. The ocean outside my window reflects the lights of the city, creating a shimmering path across the dark water. In the distance, I can see a cruise ship leaving port, heading out for its week-long journey through the Caribbean. I wonder about the people on board, what stories they're living, what truths they'll discover or secrets they'll keep. I wonder if any of them will have their world shattered by an unexpected glimpse through a drone's camera lens, will have their comfortable reality torn apart by evidence they can't deny. But mostly I think about the future. About the person I'm becoming. About the partner I'll be someday when I'm ready to try again. And I know that whoever that person is, whoever earns my trust next, they'll get the best version of me, a version that's been tested and broken and rebuilt stronger. A version that knows the value of honesty and won't settle for anything less. That's something Evelina could never give me. But her betrayal, painful as it was, taught me lessons I needed to learn. Sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best things we become. Sometimes we need to be broken before we can truly heal. And sometimes the end of one story is really just the beginning of another, better one. Thank you for watching this video. YouTube may no longer suggest my channel to you, so subscribe to it to receive new interesting stories. You will also help the channel grow and improve the quality of its content. The screen now displays a playlist with other interesting stories that you can listen to. You can also write in the comments what stories you would like to see on the channel.